So we'd like to move on now to talk with Jacque Adams, who is one of the fellows at residence at the Cobb Mountain Art and Ecology Project, and also our operations coordinator here at the Middletown Art Center. Jacque's contribution in just the day-to-day is invaluable, but also helps to connect us to this wonderful project, Scott Parody's Art and Ecology Project, and the world-class ceramic work that is being produced. Jacque, are you with us? Maybe we could unmute.
Yeah, I'm here.
Jacque. Hey, hi, Jacque. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
You want me to just speak about the work? And
I'd love that, please. Yeah, you've got so much great knowledge to share. Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Jacque Adams. I am the operations coordinator at MAC. I'm also a artist in resident at Cobb Mountain Art and Ecology Project. So that's what brought me to this area. The collection of ceramics that's in the MAC right now is made all here at the facility. One of the amazing things about this facility is that it draws a number of artists from all over the world and brings us together. And the greatest thing about what we have here is that a lot of things is you can't do it alone. So we have this really amazing kiln called an anagama, which is a Japanese word for a kiln built into the hillside. And it's 250 cubic feet. So it's the size of a medium-sized whale, if you will. We fire this anagama kiln for 9 days, and we use a mixture of hard and soft wood. We source that wood off of the land here, so we process it here as well. We really need a team of people to fire this kiln. So that's the hardest part, is that we all have to come together and know what we're doing to help fire this kiln and keep it to temperature for 9 days. So that's one of the biggest draws to this place. And the majority of the work that is in this show, ceramic based, was fired in this anagama kiln. So you can start to get a variety of what comes out of this kiln and how different zones of the kiln give different effects. Sometimes they're much more, they have a lot more ash on them and they look a little crunchier. They've got much more texture on them. Maybe those pieces were closer to the firebox and the ash didn't melt enough. Whereas some pieces have, for example, my two planters that are on that black pedestal really got a lot of action, and you can see that they've got all these drips happening on them, and all of the drips is the ash collecting on the shelf and then dripping off of the shelf onto the pieces. So different zones give different effects.
So interesting. It's a really extraordinary group of work in its diversity of style and of course its technical achievement. I'm learning so much with each show and with each new grouping of work that MAC is so fortunate to be able to have access to as we kind of bring you guys down off the mountain, so to speak.
And that's the beautiful thing about ceramics, is that no two people ever make the same thing or ever produce the same type of work. And that's what we love about ceramics. But that happens in the wood kiln as well, because different zones give different effects. One of the other artists that we have is Darren Cockrell, and I met him at the last anagama firing, but he's been firing with Scott, who owns this property, for I think about 20 years. So he can speak more about his work, but it just really goes to show that we are a small little community and we band together, and it really helps us as artists grow with each other.
That's terrific. It really sounds like an extraordinary place to visit. In fact, I was just speaking to a friend of mine who lives up on Cobb Mountain this afternoon, who does wonderful woodworking and metal fabrication, Greg Klaus of Art by Design Woodworking. And he greatly encouraged me to come and visit the project and see what's going on.
I'll show you around.
Yeah, I'd love that. It's great. Well, thanks very much, Jacque. And I think this would be a great point to introduce Darren Cochran and hear a little bit more about Darren's work. Darren, are you with us?
I am.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being a part of this. So, Michael, if you'd like to swing us into the center of the main gallery, where we see Darren's beautiful vessels there on the pedestals. I'll just jump right in, Darren, and I was really quite struck by your statement about these pieces, again, on point and on theme with our exhibit Apart and Connected tonight. Could you speak a little bit about the statement of your work?
Yeah, so some of the statement is really addressing the apart and connected. Kind of what I go for is, I guess, let me back up a little background, is I'm not formally trained in ceramics or art, and my background of education comes from anthropology. So I tend to view things from a more holistic perspective, human universals, and I look at separations a little differently. So, you know, these pieces, to me, division and separation among people is just our normal. That's what our norm is. And we tend to experience them with fear a lot of times, but the reality is it's just inescapable. That is, you know, these divisions and separations as part of modern civilization. That's how we operate in this specialized society. And so a lot of what I'm going with my work is kind of trying to address that kind of conundrum of specialization. It's something I've struggled with just in my life. Is I like to think of myself as a generalist, but you can't operate in this modern civilization as a generalist. Everything is specialized. And so they're kind of addressing that, and how as specialized as you can be, you can't really escape it. So just drawing a black line down the middle of a piece is somewhat arbitrary, but very symmetrical. And it just kind of draws attention to everything that lies underneath as part of a one whole. And it's kind of makes you draw the questions, why is there this line there? Where, when we put lines between things, why and where do we put them?
Yeah, boundaries, lines, all the things, in fact, in this very separate existence we've been living lately, we really understand boundaries.
Yeah.
The whole world does now in new and quite introspective ways.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about these black lines and the wood firing process is you can see on the smaller, shorter piece to the left there, without as bold of a line, you could barely even see the line. And sometimes it just gets obliterated by the firing. And I find that really wonderful, because we're coming together as a group of people to fire this kiln, and how it's fired collectively dictates the way it looks. And putting this thing on that's my mark that may or may not be there afterwards based on how we work together to fire it kind of exemplifies my intent.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the pieces continue to inform you in your whole process that way. They sort of tell you what they are.
Absolutely. And some of my newer work, there's one of the pieces in there that's a little more segmented, as opposed to, you can actually see there's like lines that look like they're cut into it. It's not one of those three, it's all the way across the room. But those are some of my newer work, one that just came out this last firing that Jacque was just talking about. And that one, they're built as one solid whole. And then those lines, even though it looks like they might be carved into them or put together in separate pieces, are just pressed into them. And sometimes you see a big variation in color on those, where I add some glaze or a different slip. And sometimes that is not even noticeable after the firing. And it kind of just exemplifies what's going on in society. We draw these boundaries and lines that sometimes seem so rigid and fearful, and sometimes they just disappear, and sometimes they stay solid.
It's interesting that this piece here, the small one, it's very gradient, which I particularly enjoy, because, you know, it just has a lot of nuance of color. The other one is solid, and it's very demarcated, and the joinery of the individual pieces is extraordinary. It's sort of, again, it's that apart and connected. It almost looks like it's come apart and then been reformed.
They are. And what I find interesting, or what I like about that, is they're actually, it is all built as one form, all pressed into it. So there's actually nothing that really came apart. And that's kind of getting at, you know, part of my worldview of human universals. We're all the same. no matter who you are, where you are, or really when in time you existed. And that kind of, to me, that highlights for that is all these little separate parts, seemingly different, are really all part of the same thing.
And it's a great point to just end on there, because yes, we are very much more a part of one another than I think lately, especially we've been able to feel in its fullest capacity. So it's a wonderful reminder by their physical presence of how we are very connected, very universal.